How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dish podcast. My name is Brett Schwellmeyer, sports editor, and I'll be your host, and I'll have my co-hosts introduce themselves.
What's up, guys? This is sports editor Pavli Markovic back with you.
Hi, I'm Katie Shaver, sports reporter.
And I'm Ford Griffith, sports reporter.
As you can tell by Pavle's reaction right there, it's been quite the week for the Cyclones. That started off with tough game against Houston, which I think a lot of people had circled on their calendar, and then a lot of people got very nervous and scared for it when it was announced that Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert were not going to play. That really hurt them a lot in the first half. Iowa State just couldn't really do a whole lot, couldn't contend too well. Second half, they looked better. They outscored Houston, but still, when you're down your top two scorers and you're going into a top 5 team, the top team in the Big 12, you're probably going to lose, and Iowa State did.
Yeah, and I know going into it, like even with Curtis and Keyshawn, like we didn't know if they were going to play or not. Obviously, this is going to be still a difficult task to complete because Houston, like you said, is top dog in the conference. But, you know, they kind of showed it. I mean, I don't think the team as a whole for Houston didn't really show it. It just L.J. Cryer and Milos Uzan really just lit up the Cyclones from there.
Yep.
I mean, their deep shooting just couldn't not stop. And then, you know, I mean, just, yeah, like you said, it seemed like Houston's defense was just strapping Iowa State's offense early on. And, I mean, everyone struggled. I mean, particularly Milan Momcilovic, you know, couldn't get anything going. I think he just finished with 0 points in the first half and had all 16 of his points in the second half. So, you know, the team as a whole just didn't look just right because obviously, you know, you're missing your two leading scorers with Curtis and Keyshawn and kind of just told the story from there, even though second half they tried to come back in this one.
Yeah, when you have guys that it feels like every time that a team plays Iowa State, there's always one guy who seems to have like a career night or just like lights it up everywhere. And Cryer did that against the Cyclones. 5 for 7 from 3, 11 for 17 from the floor. I mean, it felt like he just could not miss. We've seen that with Iowa State players this season too, where like some of them get hot, like Curtis Jones, but obviously he wasn't playing. So then you've got to look at, okay, well, who's got to step up? Well, it felt like Milan was probably going to be that guy to get the scoring going, and he did in the second half, but it felt like if he had gotten more in the first half, maybe that would have helped them. Also, Nate Heise had a really good night as well. ESPN says 12 points, but I think he had 11. I think that ESPN's wrong right there. Uh-huh. Still, nonetheless, I mean, Heise stepped up when he needed to. He was 2 for 3 from 3, but I just feel like the offense, as it just didn't look like normal. And I feel like you've got to credit Houston's defense for that. They're like number 3 in the country in terms of defense, and it bit the Cyclones.
Yeah, and I think Heise's stat line's actually correct. I mean, because Iowa State's athletics page has 12 points. So
okay.
He might have actually had 12 exactly.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, but still, nonetheless, you know, like you said, Houston's defense, obviously, and I talked about, I think, in the last podcast, like, you know, Houston by far had the best defense in the conference and, like you said, top defense in the nation because I think West Virginia was second or something with 64 around. I'm just kind of like estimating here. Right. But then Houston was way better with 57 on average for defense, along with their three-point shooting, which really killed the Cyclones here. I mean, they seem like to be able to hold things down low. I mean, they held Jawan Roberts, their main big guy, to only 4 points in this one. So I feel like the interior, Iowa State did a really good job holding that. It's just I feel like they couldn't really stop the perimeter shooting. And I know some of Cryer's shots were just like step backs, kind of like shook the defender off him, kind of looked like he was styling on us. So, But yeah, it's really just the main aspect of it was just holding the perimeter shooting, which they could not do.
Yeah, I feel like another part of that, when Heise was guarding Cryer, they had that cylinder foul that I know that you talked about. That I feel like was kind of the moment that, again, you were saying it too, that the game really got away from them at that moment because Heise gets called for the foul because he's playing up on Cryer because he has to. Then when that foul gets called, he backs away from him. And what does Cryer do? He makes a 3 right in his face. And, of course, that's going to happen when you give him any amount of separation. He's going to make the shot because he was so hot that night. Huge point swing right there when Iowa State was trying to get back into it late in the second half. I feel like that was a big turning point. I feel like another part of it, too, was the amount of turnovers. Iowa State turned over Houston 5 more times, but the points off turnovers really fueled Houston's offense.
Yeah, and I know, going back to that cylinder foul real quick, obviously, going into that foul, I think Iowa State was on a 13-0 run. They're clawing back to what I think they were down by 16 by the most of it. And they were within a possession or two of Houston on that possession, and it looked like Heisey was playing clean defense right there. He wasn't hitting him or anything, wasn't like engaging into space, and apparently the ref saw it as a cylinder foul compared to getting Heisey and hit in the nose with his elbow, trying to move up to his shoulder. So did find that odd, but yeah, like you said, like another thing was the turnovers, which they did really struggle at. I mean, I think everyone had a hand in the turnover aspect. No one could really handle Houston's pressure defense, and it kind of showed just because of the way that how sloppy it looked kind of just the whole time, because Houston's defense does that to other teams.
Yeah, the only two Cyclones that didn't have turnovers were Deshaun Jackson and Brant Chatfield. So obviously the guys who were down low, who were right next to the basket, just didn't turn over. But again, the guys who were down low, those guys, they struggled down low too. Joshua Jefferson shot 1 for 9 in this game, finished with 4 points. He did have 8 assists. He had 4 rebounds, all on the defensive side, and 7 steals, which was a really good number. Also want to shout out Tamin Lipsey, 2 steals in this game. He broke the Iowa State all-time steals record, passing Monte Morris. So that was pretty exciting. Kind of one of the only good things that came out of this game for Iowa State.
Yeah, and it looks like he's on the defensive side too, which was funny enough. But, like we saw Jefferson, I think he had 8 at Colorado too, which kind of set that new. And then 7 steals again, almost got there, but just fell short. And then obviously Lipsey, still only a junior, and is already passing the all-time steals record for Iowa State. So I think it's really well done from what he's done at Iowa State so far, and he's got another full year to really cement himself as that steals leader. Because I know he just passed Monte Morris, but now he gets a stat pad now.
Right, and Monte was a 4-year starter too, so that just kind of shows the kind of pickpocketer that Tamin is. I have no doubts that he can, take that number up to, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but maybe around 300, close to there. I feel like that's not really out of the picture.
Yeah, I mean, injuries aside and all that. I mean, he's even playing through a broken thumb right now, so he could do anything unless his leg falls off. Which I hope that doesn't happen.
He'd probably still play. I mean, that dude's tough as nails.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, just to kind of wrap up this game, it was expected to be a loss. It felt better than it was, though. They only lost by 9 points. Again, without the 2 leading scorers, you're going to be in a rough patch. Houston's so good. Their transition from the American Athletic to the Big 12 was just, I think, better than any team has ever done transitioning to a different conference in college basketball.
Absolutely. To
win this league outright 2 years straight and having 20 games this year is absolutely insane. So huge credit to Houston and Kelvin Sampson.
Absolutely.
After that, another disappointing one for the Cyclones on the road at Oklahoma State, who entered this game with a losing record. It felt like Iowa State was going to possibly bounce back. They played well enough against Houston that it didn't really raise too many concerns, I don't think. You had Curtis Jones come back from this game after his illness. Keyshawn was still out, but Iowa State still lost the game by 6 points in a very empty stadium, too. It was disappointing.
Yeah, I have no words, honestly. They couldn't get out of their own way. I mean, 18 total turnovers, 7 of them came from Joshua Jefferson alone. And I know he's led the team in points, but still, they could not stop trying to – they shot themselves in the foot so many times. Oklahoma State didn't even look like they're trying to, play to win. They were looking very, I don't want to say sluggish, but, they weren't, looking to push to try and win, because it just showed, and, the whole stadium was basically empty. They given up on the season, Oklahoma State, I mean, they're not last, but still, up the bottom of the last, so – they didn't even look like they're really trying, except for Abu Usman. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep. But,
I mean, they just shot themselves in the foot so many times. Oklahoma State was basically saying, here, you have it. And Iowa State's no, please, you have it. You deserve this more than us right now. And it kind of just looked like that, even though they had Curtis back. And I thought Curtis would be coming back and, somewhat of a minutes restriction, maybe, just because coming off an illness or still dealing with it just at a lesser capacity. But
right.
Nope, that still didn't change anything, and this game just was probably one of the worst in the TJ era.
Yep. Again, like I said earlier, you get these guys that have career nights. Usman scores 25. He shoots 7 for 11 from the floor, 3 for 5 from 3. Makes all 8 of his free throws. The free throw shooting for Iowa State was abysmal in this one, too. I mean, there were so many times that there was a technical foul or a flagrant foul, and they made either 1 or 0 of them. And those were free points that Iowa State was, given, here, catch up in this game, and they couldn't hit them. They missed 8 free throws, and they lost the game by 6 points. That, to me, kind of was a big glaring issue of kind of why they lost the game. Also, again, Milan struggled a little bit from three. That's kind of its own thing. The turnovers were abysmal, too. This, I think, as a whole, the K-State game was terrible for Iowa State, but this one felt like it was the worst game of the season from my perspective, based on everything that kind of went into this game. This was bad.
Yeah, I have to go opposite from you there. I think the K-State game was worse than this, to be fair. Because
you could argue either way, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, this one was on the road, to be fair. You know, it doesn't come easy to win on the road in the Big 12.
Sure.
You know, but I really felt like that Kansas State game, I mean, man, you respond after a half-court heave to just, you know, obviously lose that game, which, you know, is fair. I mean, Arizona had all the momentum, but then to come back home, you had such a large win streak at home, one of the nation's best, in Hilton Coliseum, but then get basically just picked apart by that Kansas State team. And credit to them, obviously, you know, they were looking like a good team. That started the hot streak really to get them going, and I know they've struggled as of late, but, you know, that one was just worse. I mean, they lost by more in that game too. It's just both of these are just really dejecting, if I were to just sum it up.
Yeah, just not really a whole lot good to say. Post-game, TJ said that Oklahoma State was the more physical team, and that showed all night. Iowa State, even in the halftime, they were down 14 points. They couldn't even put up 30 points in the first half. They definitely looked better in the second half, just like the Houston game, but came up short. I'm wondering, I feel like this might be an issue too, is when Iowa State is down one of its top players, like when Milan's out or when, you know, Curtis or Keyshawn are out, they don't play well. It feels like they need all of the pieces every game, because when everyone's there, everyone's fully healthy, they're 18-1. They're a missed basket away from beating Auburn. When they have at least one player out, I believe they're 3-6. And again, that's happened in Big 12 play, which is tough, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it feels like knowing those rotations, knowing your roles, knowing the minutes, and having those set guys that have those, when you take someone out of it, everything just goes awry for this team.
Yeah, and I think 5 of those 6 losses, when we are missing at least one player, are on the road. So to be fair, you know, those losses coming on the road, you know, like I said, are difficult.
But you got to win on the road in neutral sites.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now in March.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go lead into. Like, you have to be able to win those games, even if you are missing 1 or 2 of your players. Like, you got to find a way to adjust. I mean, this is what the league's all about. I mean, you're not going to always be fully healthy every game. I know last year, you know, more healthy guys, having some guys also start every game last year, but then again, injuries happen, and this is what's happening to this team, and they better get right. And it's not easy now. I mean, I know they get to host their next 2 games, but look at the teams: Arizona, who's also playing good, and BYU, who's right behind them in the standings right now. I mean, Iowa State could be in the single bye category for the Kansas City in 2 weeks. So.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, they got to get their stuff together. Hopefully, Keyshawn does come back on Saturday to get that, prevent that from happening.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. There's going to be a player who's coming back. We'll preview those huge games this week. But before we do that, we'll throw it over to the women's side on how they did this past week.
Yeah, 2 games for the women's team, and they split them, went 1-1. The first game, tough loss against Baylor. The Baylor defense was tough.
Yeah, they said afterwards that defense was one of their main emphasis, and it really showed. Even though they had one of their leading scorers out, it was Dariana Little Page Bugs, which is such a fun name. But they had so many people filling the role, and it was great. It was a really great game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough offensively for the Cyclones. They shot 17 for 50 from the field. That's not going to bode well when it comes to trying to win a basketball game, and 1 for 14 from 3. I mean, we talked about how the Baylor defense was tough last week, but, I mean, it was even tougher than I expected in this game.
Yeah, they even had 21 turnovers, which is rough, and then Baylor earned 26 points off those turnovers. And then offensively for us, Audie Crooks was the only one in double digits. She had 14, and we had 5 other players only with 8 points.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want more players to score, be in double figures, but having 5 other players with 8 points, I mean, that's – in a game where you only score 52 points, I feel like that's kind of a bright spot in a way that, like, other people are contributing. And one of those people, Elisa Williams, who hasn't scored that many in a while, I feel like, only in 9 minutes did that too. She really stepped up when Audie was in foul trouble in the first half.
Yeah, and early on it felt like Audie just wasn't really in it. So it was good to see her step up. And then same with Addie Brown. She has shown, like, in these past couple of games that she is all over the court and she can fill in so many roles. And even though she wasn't, like, a constant shooter, she had 10 rebounds, which is great to see.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, coming off a 4-game winning streak. But the home game against Houston, where it felt a little off, the shooting wasn't as good as it had been in the past few games. I feel like you could kind of expect a game like this to happen. You wish, coming off a 4-game winning streak, that it'd be like, okay, yeah, we can beat this ranked opponent. But, I mean, it was – the offense just could never get into it, it felt like. I mean, Audie was off, Addie was off. Nobody was hitting shots like how they normally do. So just a tough game all around.
Yeah, it felt like I hate to say it, but it felt like they were unprepared.
Yeah, it did for sure. And Baylor was the exact opposite, where they had 4 players in double figures, another player with 9 points. Like, they really, like, all of them were like, okay, yeah, we can all play, we can all score. So it was very opposite from the Cyclones.
No, with Dariana, like, out, we had, who was it?
Yaya,
and then we had Bella Fauntleroy,
yeah.
something along those lines. And then Aaronette Vonleh, which was such a tough match with Audie.
Yeah, I mean, the Cyclones just didn't have enough players to match up with them defensively, it felt like. I mean, Ariana Jackson was tasked with Yaya for a lot of it, but there weren't enough players for the Cyclones that could guard all those Baylor players. So, tough game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then, stayed on the road. Big win against UCF, 98-73. What do you think went well for the Cyclones in that one?
We definitely saw improvement on the three-pointers, which was great to see. We went 8 for 20. 5 people made shots from there. And then I liked seeing the dynamic duo of Audie and Addie back.
Yep.
That was great to see. Audie had 29 points and Addie had 20. And then Emily Ryan followed with 16. It was very good. It felt like we were getting back to our old ways.
Yeah, for sure. It felt like that 3-game stretch right before Houston, where everybody was scoring, everybody was passing the ball, rebounding, everybody was contributing in every way. So it was very good to see that, especially with a big game coming up. But I like looking at the assists in this one because, I mean, we know that Emily's a great passer.
Mm-hmm.
Addie's been a great passer recently, but 4 assists for Audie, 4 assists Addie, 4 Emily, 3 Ariana Jackson. It was really, like, spread out. Like, everybody was passing everybody. And this game, the Cyclones shot 57%, which is a very large improvement from the Baylor game.
Yeah, and then I want to shout out Sydney Harris for that game. I haven't seen much from her. Like, she's there. I just feel like she doesn't contribute as much as she used to.
Mm-hmm.
But she went 3 for 5 from deep, and she was just a great player to watch. Same with Ariana Jackson. She kind of got back into her groove, and so that was good to see.
Yeah, I feel like Sydney Harris, it's fun because I feel like every once in a while she has a game where the other team doesn't really know what she's capable of, and then they like back off on the 3-point line, and then she knocks down 2 or 3, and it's like, oh, they just let her shoot those, and it's free buckets for Iowa State, it feels like. But this was a game where Audie, she's been a little bit more inefficient in the past 2 games, but she had her 29 points on 75% shooting. I mean, she's going to need to have a lot of performances like that coming up.
Absolutely. And then after, like, I don't know, like, we did good in the first quarter. We overshot them 23-16, but like right in the beginning we were super sloppy, and it felt like we were rushing it, and we did not have a good pace. So I'm glad we kind of steadied out, and I feel like in the past games we've really pulled through in the fourth quarter, which is great. But if you're behind so far, like, it's not going to really matter. If
you're behind that much going into the fourth, it's going to be tough to come back. Like, you got to build a lead, retain it, or like at least keep it close so you don't have to like come back from so far deep. But last time the Cyclones played UCF, their like top 4 scorers were all out, so it was like kind of expected that they blew them out. But this one, Caitlin Peterson and Emily Rodriguez were both back. They both had 20 points, but that was one piece that I was like, oh, UCF could be a little dangerous with these two. But the Cyclones just shut that down completely. 25-point win. Like, it wasn't even a question when it got to the second half.
No, and I was confident going in, but after seeing, like, just the first blowout, honestly, in, like, the first 10 minutes, it was game over.
Yeah,
I was
for
pretty
sure.
confident.
But those were 2 very different games for the Cyclones, but I feel confident going into it. So we'll talk about Kansas State in a little bit.
So looking ahead to Iowa State's games this week, we'll start back on the men's side. Pretty big rematch on Saturday, taking on number 22 Arizona. We all know what happened last time. Caleb Love hit the shot of a lifetime, forced overtime. Iowa State couldn't handle the overtime period on the road, lost to Arizona. But this game has a bit more stakes to it. Iowa State is trying to solidify itself a double bye in the Big 12 tournament. A win here would be crucial in that. Also, Tyrese Halliburton's going to be back, honoring him for his gold medal from the Olympics. I think Georgia Yang's coming back too, just to be here. So it should be a fun day for Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like one of those special nights because you don't get to really have – luckily, the schedule worked out for this to be able to happen. But, yeah, this is a really crucial game, like you said, for Big 12 seeding. I mean, from being able to be, like, for sure double bye to now they're currently a double bye. But,
Right.
you know, if they lose one more time or even twice, then other teams like BYU and Kansas could jump them. And they still have to play BYU, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But – you know, going against this Arizona team, luckily familiarity plays here. They did keep them close in Tucson, so you think that they do maybe have a little bit more slight of an edge. That depends also if Keyshawn plays. If Keyshawn plays, I think the Cyclones shouldn't have a problem of taking down Arizona, especially in front of a packed house and such a memorable night for Halliburton and all that. But, you know, it's going to be, once again, looking at if they can contain Caleb Love. I mean, they did it the first time until he hit that half-court heave and then turned into prime Curry. So you just got to try and contain him and all of his other teammates to really get a big win here.
Yeah, I feel like Arizona, when you look at their season as a whole, they were probably thrown under the bus early. They had a super tough non-conference slate ahead of them. I mean, they lost at Wisconsin. That might have been in the tournament, though. I'm not entirely sure there. But, it was. Yep. Lost to them. Wisconsin's been on rails recently. They look like one of the better teams in the Big Ten. They lost to Duke, who was ranked 12th at the time. Looks like Duke's going to be a 1 seed probably for the tournament, possibly, maybe a 2. Lost to Oklahoma, who has been kind of like a sneaky SEC school. They've been around, but, not totally there. Then they lost to West Virginia. UCLA, they lost to another ranked team. Then they went on a pretty big win streak before losing at Texas Tech, who looks like is going to be another top seed in the tournament. They caught K-State at a really bad time when they were on that winning streak that they had. And then they lost against Houston and then BYU, who has, again, been on a tear recently. So not a whole lot of bad losses there for Arizona. I feel like coming into the season, they were one of the teams that was expected to be up there in the Big 12, and they are. And this is the type of game that you're at home, seeding's on the line. A lot of things matter in this game, and this is going to be a game for Iowa State to come out and say, hey, we know what happened the first time against you. We're not losing on our home court this time. This could be a big statement win for Iowa State if they get it done.
And I know Arizona's head coach said in his post-game press conference that I know that they're going to have something waiting for us back when they have to come to Hilton. So you're going to expect a big crowd, you know, hopefully a big energy to come out of this because, I mean, you're just lost a winnable game you should have won at Oklahoma State. And then the Houston game was obviously, you know, unfortunate circumstances losing your 2 best scorers. But if Keyshawn does play, you know, they should be on firing all cylinders. I mean, TJ keeps preaching how these past losses have been unacceptable, but we'll see if that's actually going to tell the tale against this Arizona team. Like you said, it's been on a pretty big hot streak. I mean, even with their losses, they've been pretty close. I mean, the Kansas State one only lost by 3, kept it close. Houston only lost by 4, and then the BYU one had a controversial call too in it. They only lost by 1 point. So, I mean, they're going to keep it close, I think. So it's only going to see whether they can pull ahead in the end.
Exactly. I feel like this team shoots the ball better than almost anybody in the Big 12, too. They shoot 47% from the floor, which is insane. And a lot of that kind of, again, goes back. You look at some of their bigs, 2 of their forwards, Henry Visar and Toby Owaka. Hopefully I pronounced those right. They're both shooting over 60% from the floor. And they're both playing around 20 minutes a game. So that could be a problem, too, when you look at Iowa State's front court of how are those guys going to stop those guys. Again, like you were talking about, Caleb Love is going to be the guy that they have to shut down. They proved they can do it. Now it's just going to be you can't have him make a shot like he did to force overtime in that first game.
No. And I think another player, too, who also kind of hurt the Cyclones was Carter Bryant off the bench. And, you know, he hasn't really played, I guess, really great, but, you know, he still was end up lighting up the Cyclones in that game. So, I mean, do I expect him to repeat his performance from when they played in Tucson? Probably not, but still, like, if they were to keep an eye on someone off the bench, it'd probably be Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, every team usually kind of has somebody who steps up in a certain game, and he was that guy that time. Could be a different guy this time. You never really know. But one constant that you can probably bet on is Caleb Love. I feel like if there's a difference maker that Arizona has, it's going to be him. But yeah, I feel like this game, it's going to be a lot of fun. Ranked matchup, 2 top teams in the Big 12, 8 p.m. on Saturday. It should be a good time. I'm excited for it.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
Then after that, Iowa State will host BYU, who's now in the top 25 for, I believe, the first time this season, ranked 25th in the country. They've been on a roll recently. They've, they've come on late. They lost 2 straight games to Arizona and Cincinnati, but since then they've rattled off 5 wins in a row against West Virginia, K-State, Kansas, Arizona, and Arizona State. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, but then you look at the games before, lost by nearly 20 at Cincinnati, who Iowa State beat by, I know it was a little bit close, but still at Cincinnati, and then hosted number 20 Arizona at the time and lost by 11. So, this team, I see they're catching the right hot streak at the right time. And you look at, BYU and Arizona, this is unfortunate for Iowa State being one of the top defensive teams in the Big 12. They have to face the top 2 offensive teams in the Big 12. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do against this BYU team. Like you said, they've been on a hot streak. They're actually creeping up right behind Iowa State in the Big 12 standings. They're tied with them at 11-6 in the conference, but are currently 5th with a 20-8 overall record. So, but depending on what happens with Iowa State and Arizona, even if what happens, BYU still has to play. They host West Virginia, and West Virginia hasn't looked great as of recent either. So, say BYU beats West Virginia, and then say Iowa State loses to Arizona. Iowa State's that 5th seed, having to go to a single bye to play on Wednesday instead of a Thursday in Kansas City.
Yeah, this could be one of the more pivotal games of seeding for the Big 12 tournament. A lot at stake for this one, and kind of looking back, I know that the teams aren't similar, but last year's matchups against BYU were some of the most fun matchups I've seen. The road game was, tough, competitive atmosphere. When they came to Ames, it was a really fun, close game. I feel like we might see one of those, just knowing the competitive nature, again, like we've been talking about all year of the Big 12. It's so tough.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like BYU might be starting to peak at the right time, though. When you do look at some of these wins, the Arizona win is impressive, but it was just by that 1 point, like you said, controversial call. At West Virginia, that's tough to do. K-State has been slipping a little bit. They had that peak, and now they're kind of towards the valley again. They beat a struggling Kansas team by nearly 40 points, which is crazy. So it'll be interesting to see what type of BYU team comes to play, but also what type of Iowa State team comes to play. Are we going to get fully healthy Iowa State, or is it going to be we're just not there mentally for this game? There's a lot of unknowns.
I think it really depends on what happens Saturday against Arizona,
right,
to be honest. But looking at BYU scores, they're going to obviously have to handle Richie Saunders, leading the team with 15.9 points per game right now, shooting extremely well at 52% from the field, 44% from 3. So, he's going to be the go-to guy for Iowa State, 6'5" forward. Probably have Keyshawn on him, I'd say, if he is healthy, say for the Arizona game and for the BYU game, just because of his size and his scoring ability, despite him being listed a forward. And then, they have another guy, Trevin Nell, is shooting the ball really well from 3, 44.9%. So I think he's going to be another player to watch for this BYU team.
Yeah. I'll also throw in Kiba Kita. I think I said that right. 7.6 rebounds a game. So, again, when you look at those down-low matchups, he's going to be taking on Joshua Jefferson, Deshaun Jackson, Brent Chatfield. He's going to probably cause a problem for those guys. So, I'm excited to watch that matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. 2 really big games for the men this week. We'll throw it over to the women's side as they've got senior night on tap.
Yeah, the regular season finale for the Cyclones taking on Kansas State. Emily Ryan's last home game as a Cyclone. It's weird because I watched her in high school, and now she's playing her last game in Hilton.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. So I definitely think it's going to be a good game. They're going to want to put Emily, send her away on the right note, leaving Hilton. The last time we played Kansas State, we lost 79 to 87 in overtime. And it was a tough loss.
For sure. Kansas State was ranked 11th at the time. They're now ranked 14th. And Ioka Lee, it was one of her first games out when we played them the first time. and she's still lingering with an injury. She played a few minutes 2 games ago, but didn't play in Kansas State's last game. So I think that'll be a big factor in how this one kind of shapes up and who plays well, who Iowa State tries to get going offensively.
Absolutely. With Ioka Lee out, that definitely benefits us. Like, she averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds. But one of our biggest competitors was Serena Sundell. Last time we played her, she had 23 points. So she's definitely going to be someone that we need to look out for.
Yeah, I've heard Coach Fennelly talk about her as being like one of the best guards, not only in the Big 12 but in the country. She's, I think, had a triple-double this year. Like, she does it all, kind of like Addie Brown, but she plays point guard. In their most recent game against Baylor, in which they lost by, I think, 17 points, she had 7 turnovers, which it's a little hard to turn her over, but if Iowa State can kind of do that, which I know the Cyclones aren't known for getting steals or turning people over too much, but if they can turn her over a decent amount and shut down everybody else, then I don't see why the Cyclones can't upset them.
Right. It's going to depend how our defense plays out. And honestly, like you said, we don't have the best record. I mean, Addie Brown definitely steps up. Same with Audie. Like, she's great with the defensive rebounds and great with steals. And then it's going to rely on Ariana Jackson mostly.
For sure. I'm sure that she'll be tasked with taking on Sundell, guarding her most of the game. But, I mean, seeing how they played in Manhattan, Audie and Addie both had 20. Audie had 28 and 11 end of that game. But since that game, I feel like we've seen a lot more offense. We've seen a lot more people step up and score. I mean, there were like 10 people that scored in that game, but 2 in double figures, and then nobody else higher than, I guess Kelsey had 9, but nobody else higher than 6. So I think in this one, I think Emily's going to have a good game. I think she's going to be like all the emotions. She's going to be hyped up. I think she's going to go out there, like, play super hard. Like, I don't see why not. But I think it'll be a really fun one.
Yeah, I agree. And then, yes, Audie and Addie, like, totally sealed the deal, but that game we also made 12 points from deep, and that's great for us. And then, but we've also improved so much, so I'm excited to kind of see how that turns out and how K-State's going to defend us, knowing how much we've improved.
For sure. There's a lot more that they have to defend than that time. That'll be a fun one, for sure. Emily Ryan, it's going to be a little sad to see her go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorites.
But then the Cyclones travel to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. As of right now, they're a 7th seed. Well, actually, they're locked in as a 7th seed. So we still have to see where they'll be, like, or who they'll play. That'll be the winner of the 10-15 game.
Yep, we're looking at Cincinnati or Texas Tech right now, which we've both won. Previously, we've beat Cincinnati 72-52 and Texas Tech 71-58, so very similar scores.
Yeah, and I mean, Iowa State, everybody below them in the Big 12 they've beaten, and I feel like most of them have been pretty handily. Like, it's not, none of them have been super close games, I feel like. Like, Kansas played us a little close, but outside of that, like, nobody that should be too scary, I guess.
No, and then, like we've said multiple times, like, we've improved a lot. So, and we played these guys pretty early on. So
yeah, that's not locked in though. It could be Kansas as the 10 seed. It could be, I think there's like 3-4 teams that could be the 15 seed. So there's still a lot to play out, but I like the way that it's shaping up for the Cyclones.
Yeah, me too. And then, like, as Brett said earlier, though, like, is this going to be a game where it's like our emotions are going to get in the way, or if it's like actually going to be a good game? So I think it's all going to depend, and I'm excited to see it.
Absolutely. It'll be fun.
Guys, I think it's time to look at bracketology again. So Iowa State holds on to a 2 seed for the men's side. That will change after the Oklahoma State game. I don't see them getting a 2 seed anymore. I feel like they're going to have to, like, win the whole shebang in the Big 12 tournament to get back up there, get some quality wins, because I feel like that Oklahoma State loss just hurt them immensely. That's just not a loss you can take. The K-State loss was bad too. Right now they're still in the west region of the bracket, 2 seed in Milwaukee. The way that this bracket works out for right now, I like it for the most part. You'd be in Milwaukee. If you win, you're taking on an Ole Miss team that seems to be struggling, or a VCU team that's in a pretty weak, I would say, this year, Atlantic 10. I don't think the A10 is that great this year. Your other top seeds in this region, your 3 seed is going to be Texas A&M, who's on a bit of a skid right now. They've got a really tough road to finish out the regular season. I know they've got Auburn in that mix. They might have Florida too, which is tough for them, sucks for them. You've also got Purdue in there, who's been on the struggle bus too. They've lost a lot of games that they probably should have won against top teams. So they're on the fall. And your 1 seed is Florida. Florida kind of scares me. They look like one of the most complete teams in college basketball from my perspective, I would say. But the way that this bracket works out, I can see a path to the Elite Eight for Iowa State. It's just, can they come into the game with in the right mental state? Is everyone going to be ready to go? How are they going to be feeling after the Big 12 tournament? And are they going to be ready for the gauntlet that lies ahead of them?
Yeah, I love how he went from potentially getting that 1 seed back to now, that's not happening anymore.
Right.
Maybe like on the brightest of days, like maybe win the Big 12 championship and win these last 3 games to maybe get a 2 seed. So, like you said, I know how I talked about when they were scheduled to be in the Auburn side of the bracket. I did like that, how he had to play head-to-head. I know it was in Maui, but still, like, they still face them. They know what they're like and had them on the ropes. So, but yeah, like you said, this Florida team, I mean, we'll see if they actually make it. You know, like I said, they could be scary, but then they still have, as of now, they have BYU in their 4 teams in one side of the bracket. So, I mean, I think the Cougars could do it. You know, we'll never see it. We'll see how that goes unfolds. But then obviously Purdue. You know, I find it funny how ever since they scheduled that home and home series with us, they just took a tumble. So might be the Cyclones' curse. But like you said, I think this bracket could be favorable, just the way it kind of pans out. I mean, like you said, Florida could be scary, but we'll see if they make it there.
Yeah, I feel like that top part of the bracket looks tougher. Florida, again, really strong 1 seed. You got a rising 8 seed in BYU. Clemson as the 5 has looked strong in recent weeks. They made the Elite Eight a season ago. Purdue's Purdue. They're gonna either like lose in the first round or like make it all the way in the tournament. It's what they do. They're Purdue. But the bottom part of the bracket, I think, favors Iowa State a lot. I think that of those 8 teams, looking at the Milwaukee bracket, looking at the Wichita bracket, like you've got UCLA as your 6th seed taking on a play-in game with Arkansas State and regular Arkansas and Wake Forest, where Omaha Blue is. So that could be interesting if they can make it a little ways and match up with Iowa State again.
That would be funny.
Yep. Yeah. Women's side, what do we have going on over there? They're still like right around the bubble, aren't they?
Another week on the bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, it's becoming old at this point. I just wish that they could get off of it. But as of right now, they'd take on Washington, who looks to be in a little bit of a similar situation as the Cyclones, where they don't have a ranked win. But I think that'd be a fun one.
No, and I don't know. Like, I haven't like deep dived into their stats, but they don't look too crazy difficult. And then if we win that, we're supposedly going to play Louisville, which makes me a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, that would be a tough one. Louisville's currently 25th in the country, but I mean, obviously Washington would be the first team to look out for. They're 12th in the Big Ten, so I feel like that'd be a pretty favorable matchup for the Cyclones, but I mean, you never really know.
Yeah, I mean, like on our little side of the bracket, it looks pretty difficult, not gonna lie. We have some really great teams, like we have USC over here and everything, so I don't really know how it's all gonna play out.
Yeah, I feel like that looks like a pretty tough section, at least the bottom part, where it's Louisville, should the Cyclones beat Washington, Louisville, who's top 25, and then probably Kentucky, who is also very good.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be tough.
Yep. I feel like, again, when you talk about like the seeding and the strength of teams, when you look at the 1 and 2 seeds on the women's side of the bracket, I feel like it's a lot stronger than the men's side. Like in Iowa State's region, you've got Notre Dame as your 1 and USC as your 2 on the women's side. The other side of the bracket has South Carolina as a 1 and UConn as a 2. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's just powerhouses.
Yeah, it's so hard for those lower seeds to just kind of like run their way through in the women's side. Yep. But yeah, that's how it looks right now. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how everything plays out.
Yeah.
Yep. Women have senior night against Kansas State on Sunday, then the Big 12 tournament, hopefully making some noise down there in Kansas City. Men's team hopefully can get back on track with a couple big ranked opponents coming up. But that'll do it from us today. Thank you guys so much for watching this latest episode of The Daily Dish. Like, subscribe, everything like that. We'll be back after this week. See you next time.